Hey
Hello.
everyone. So welcome to the first episode of the 226.
Exactly. 226 is a podcast about a variety of different topics. We'll kind of explore that as we go along, I think is the plan. But the 226 is the house address for the residence that we're at right now.
Yep.
It's a lower level of an apartment where we're recording this podcast, at least for right now.
Yeah.
Originally, how are we gonna do it? We're gonna.
The name?
Yeah, we planned on thinking about the name live and then deciding what it should be called during the first episode, but we decided to.
Yeah, we saw that going very badly in many different ways.
It was very interesting though, because we were both looking for we looked for a synonym for
Conversation.
conversation.
We looked for it at the exact same time without knowing it.
So we both looked in the thesaurus for conversation and found things like tete-a-tete or vis-a-vis.
Which are really cool.
Very interesting names, but very difficult to make work, I think, with we're not French, so.
If you do look up conversation synonyms, tete-a-tete and vis-a-vis are both like two-person conversations. Think of two chairs facing each other, and those chairs are connected. So those conversations are just being had kind of intimately with those two people.
It's supposed to be maybe the theme for this show is just conversation about whatever topic we're bringing to the table. But before we get to that, we should probably introduce ourselves. So,
I'm John. So what do you want to know about me? I have a ton of passions. Started out, probably first passion ever was music. Grew up in a family of music, play piano, trumpet, all sorts of stuff like that. And that's influenced me in so many different ways. Just like practice etiquette and getting stuff done, things like that. From there, I got a lot into video, pictures. I'm essentially full-time photographer now. Can I say that?
I would say so. I think your full-time wedding photographer is definitely within the realm of possibility, at least financially. So
financially, it's definitely a thing. Yeah. So I do that also. That's a really big passion of mine. Love making images, sharing those with people, getting people smiling through it. Absolutely love that. I think that's all you need to know about me for now.
Yeah, more will come up as we go along.
Yeah.
My name is also John. My big area of interest is also in music, but more in the production side of it. So 8 years ago, I was at my grandpa's house, and I've been raised to play piano and played trumpet and a few other variety of different instruments, and saw GarageBand on one of those big tube Macs that he had at his house.
Yes.
And so I started playing around with that and seeing what it was like to compose a song in that software. And it was actually a year later, we were planning on taking another trip to my grandparents' house, and I knew that was going to be my next time that I would be able to make a song on a computer and like write it down and be able to do all the things that I wanted to. So I kind of planned the entire song in my head and then went there, and I was able to make the song on the computer, save it, and then email it to myself, or emailed it to my dad. Actually, that was before I even had an email.
Oh, man.
So that was about I was a sophomore in high school, I think. Just when computers were starting to become an essential part of education and just everyday lives in at least our culture. So that started it's been 10, maybe 15 years, I can't remember, somewhere around there. It's been a long journey to where I was today. I went to college and I started getting into more of electronic music, all sorts of different kinds. There's the hip hop kind of, there's the trap, there's dance music, 4 on the floor, your typical house things. Just learning a lot of different things about music synthesis, making your own sounds, how to make those sounds sound good with each other. That, I guess, would be my main passion. So just editing songs, making little mashups, making all sorts of different stuff. I like to try to keep my mind open and see where things take me. Happy little accidents, right?
Bob Ross.
Other areas of interest I have are also with photography and video. I did take some broadcasting classes and was very interested in those things before I even met John. So that kind of shows how we we gelled so well together because our interests are so similar. Another one of mine is racing. So open wheel car racing, I love it. Especially something like Formula One. So could talk about that all day. Also running is another big passion of mine. I've been an athlete for some time, and I believe John is starting to get into that as well.
Yeah, training for a half marathon right now. That's going well. Discovering blisters are a thing on feet. But now 10-mile run coming up this weekend, so I'm excited. A lot of work, but
yeah, we're both kind of sore right now.
Intervals
and running the day before. So I guess moving on, we should talk about just the outline of the show, how it's going to go on a normal episode that isn't the pilot. Normal episode will probably have a brief introduction, and we'll introduce a topic, something that we'll talk about for the episode. And I think episodes will be, about 40 minutes? 40 minutes to an hour, somewhere in there. So we'll have the topic, and we'll each bring 3 to 5 points to the table, and we'll just discuss them. Maybe we'll find something similar. Maybe we'll go down a rabbit hole. Who knows? I'm excited to find out how things happen. But we thought a good topic for the first show would be creative content, because that's kind of a meta topic, considering this is a creative type podcast, and that would cater more to the people that we would think would listen to this kind of production. So creative content is the theme for this week, and so we each brought a number of different points, things that we think are important about that topic, or things that influence us or drive us, and so on. So
all right, so creativity, it's so ambiguous.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's the great thing. So maybe it's such a huge topic for a first episode, but the first thing I wrote down was why do we do anything creative? So what in the brain says, hey, let's make this, or hey, let's go out and just do this? On the way over here, I was thinking of interior designers, and just why would they say, oh, this room looks terrible, and then continue on to rearrange furniture, buy new furniture, paint a wall. Just something as simple as room decorations even. But then you get into the media that we're into, making music, videos, pictures, and what in the brain goes, hey, I want to do this, I want to make this.
Is it maybe for the aesthetics of the piece?
I don't know, but it's just such an interesting topic to me. I don't think there's ever going to be a real answer.
Oh, no. I think it would probably vary from person to person, for sure. Especially even from one person in different situations might be making something different for different reasons. But there is always something, I think, that drives them or pushes them towards making whatever content they...
And then it's is that within every person making something? Or are you solely doing it for someone else at that point?
I suppose.
So YouTubers who start off and they make 10 videos maybe, and they get through those first 10 videos, and every single one of those videos is a super huge passion project. Yeah. And it's this creativity thing that just gets shared like crazy. And then all of a sudden they've got 10,000 followers, and they're making bigger and better things. And then, at what point, or maybe not at what point, does that YouTube channel ever stop being a creative thing for themselves, or are they just doing it for followers at that point?
I suppose. And that might touch into some artist integrity there. I guess I would hope, regardless of whether we have 2 people listening to this podcast or 2 million, I wouldn't really want to change anything.
No.
I would always be striving to continue to improve on what I know and how we go about doing it, but I don't think I would want that to change, or I don't think my drive would change. I don't think why I'm doing this would change. Yeah. It's all about personal growth, and then using conversation as a means of expanding upon that. So
no, it's a really good point. trying to be authentic to yourself, I think, is a big part of creativity.
And people notice that too.
Oh yeah.
Especially in the music realm, you hear sell out. I'm not sure much of it. You follow more photographers, but I'm sure there have been some who rise to a certain amount of popularity, and then they start to have access to other means of doing things, and then maybe their drive changes. It becomes more about how they can make another dollar, or I really can't put myself in their shoes, but
no, in the like photography realm, I see this in wedding photographers actually. So I've only been doing weddings for 2 years now. I've got 20 under my belt, something like that. I have one tomorrow actually. No, Saturday. Whatever.
Feels like tomorrow.
So I kind of see these two groups. There's one side that they make all these super bright, happy pictures to please other people, and there's nothing, like, there's creativity there, and there's great creation. That's repetitive, but they're doing wonderful things. But then there's another group that their pictures are also just a little bit different. Like no wedding looks the same, you know? Or like you can tell they have their style, but it's unlike anyone else.
They have their little niche.
Exactly.
In the way they shoot things.
So it's like, are you going to appeal to everyone, or are you going to appeal to yourself and let people come to you? Yeah.
Yeah, and which one of those is more authentic? Which one of those do you think will have better results in the end?
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah.
So
another thing like that, Terry Redlin. I don't know have you heard of Terry Redlin?
I've heard you mention the name a few times.
Yeah, so I mentioned I'm into music. Went on a Wind Symphony tour last year, and we visited the Terry Redlin Art Museum. Okay. It's in South Dakota, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. And Terry Redlin, I think, what was the thing they said? He was the most popular painter in America.
Interesting.
Or like America's most loved painter. How you get that to be an objective title, I don't know. But he was that. And so you look at his paintings, and he's an incredible artist. Really knows how to play with light and create all these scenes. But you walk through the hall where all his paintings are. They're all on the exact same size canvas, all horizontal except for 2. And keep in mind, there's like 200, 300 paintings.
Goodness.
Okay, so all like 3 foot by 2 foot canvas, and then you look at them, and they're almost all the exact same painting. So he painted like nature scenes, farm scenes, kind of scenes from the Midwest. It's in South Dakota. We're in the Midwest. But he gave the people what they wanted rather than like being true to himself, I think.
Yeah.
And he never really expanded from the first painting that really sold or people really liked.
Exactly. Was he still alive? I believe. I think I did some student teaching out in Watertown, and that's where the museum, I believe, is. Somewhere around there, at least they were talking about. I think they were saying something, or I heard a conversation about how he was still living, maybe not as an artist anymore, but he was still alive, and he had some family around him. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see like an artist's path, depending on what they use to motivate them, how that would change throughout their career. And of course, you can never go back and try you can't try it again, but definitely an interesting idea. What pushes you to do art?
Yeah, or like what was his goal, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
I have a point about very similar topic, I think, is what is the goal of your creative content, and then how do you let that make decisions about the specific piece of work that you're working on.
Okay.
So that's kind of pitting the what versus the how. So a lot of people know how to take a picture, right? You just kind of point the camera.
Yeah.
But once you start to have ideas about what you're trying to accomplish with this picture, you want this to be aesthetically pleasing. Well, then you get like your rule of thirds and whatnot. You can compose your shot differently. That's just a basic example of letting the how guide your actions. And I see this all over the place. I'm not sure how many people have seen a movie that came out recently was Suicide Squad.
Yep.
And before I even went to I think it was a week after it was released, something like that. It was getting horrible reviews. Yeah. Just absolutely terrible. And I thought, I'm going to go watch this movie for the specific purpose of figuring out why this movie is getting terrible reviews from so many people. I'm often skeptical of critics because they'll be very critical of movies that I thought were very good. Say, Oblivion, I thought was a fantastic movie. Yeah. There's a great plot twist. I mean, there might be a plot hole or two, but I very much appreciated just the way that story was told. And that got terrible reviews as well. So I went to Suicide Squad and I watched it, and everything about the movie was, like, from a movie standpoint, like a shot standpoint, each shot was composited very well. There weren't many. If you took any individual frame of that movie and put it up on the wall, you'd be like, oh, that's a well-framed shot. Yeah. I mean, aside from something like maybe a fight scene where it's blurry and fast action, but everything was there visually. But what it didn't do is it didn't tell a story very well at all. It jumped all over the place. There were way too many details. The Joker was more of a side character. Is more of a supporting character. Okay. I don't know. I don't want to spoil the movie for you if you end up watching it, but they tried to pack so much into a 2-hour show, which probably could have taken maybe an entire season.
Really?
Which is why something like Game of Thrones, I think, is able to. They have all of that freedom. They've got 10 hours basically worth of footage that they can tell a story where you might only go a certain amount of time. So there's just a lot more time to develop those things. They don't have to condense it and try to pack it into this tiny little space. And that's what I thought Suicide Squad did, is it didn't tell a story very well. So they kind of compromised the how, or maybe they were asking the wrong question. Maybe they were just trying to make money off of that movie, which I wouldn't be surprised about. But I think every movie, every song should tell some kind of story.
Yeah.
It should be able to put you in that moment and you feel like you're maybe a part of it, or you can empathize with some of the characters, things like that. But you should always be able, especially with movies, I think, it should be about telling a story. So how do you tell a good story? And if you apply those questions to Suicide Squad, you end up with this, just a complete mess. And that's why I think that movie didn't get very good reviews. And I mean, although it was somewhat enjoyable, I tried to appreciate it for what it was, but it was definitely not the best movie that I've seen. Not the worst, maybe I haven't thought about what my worst movie I've ever seen is.
I don't think I have either.
Maybe that'll be something interesting. You kind of find your best movie and worst movie.
We should just watch some terrible movies.
That's what we should do, I think. We might have a show on that later.
Terrible movies.
Terrible movies.
Writing it down.
We're writing. It might happen.
Storytelling. I think storytelling might be the answer to why, what, and how. That was the wrong order. Why, how, and what. No?
It very well could be.
Yeah.
There's a theory that we've studied in class before for communication, and one of them is called the narrative paradigm. I think a guy named Fisher, he just saw that stories were a part of the lives of every person. Every person has told a story before about their day, about Paul Bunyan, about just from a wide variety of different impacts and intensities. Their stories are part of what it means to be alive. So he saw that, and then how to tell a good story is maybe something that we can explore further.
Yeah.
So
stories are definitely a huge part of the human narrative.
Exactly.
And they're so powerful. You think of like presentations.
Oh yeah.
That just, like, if you start off with a story, you're going to grip the entire audience.
TED Talks kind of do that.
Yes.
It's more your specialty, but
I love TED Talks, oh man. That's another episode. We should go down.
we should avoid that rabbit hole for sure.
That's true. Okay, so we've talked about like the why, what, how, storytelling, all of that. Now, like, where does creative content come from, and like how is it used? You know.
Yeah.
So, obviously, humans make creative content. Although we just watched a trailer.
Oh yeah, right before the show, Morgan.
Yeah.
They took Watson and they gave him the final cut, I believe, and he was able to determine whether there was a scene that was tender, intense, scary, and he kind of composed or gave the shot selection for a trailer.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't know the details or how extensively he was used, but anyway, that was a good question.
Yeah, if you don't know, Watson is IBM's artificial intelligence computer. He's won Jeopardy before, right?
I believe so. He just cleaned house.
Yeah. Basically,
an incredible piece of machinery, and it's nice to see him being used in a variety of different ways. And they kind of posed the question, I believe, can computers make art? Mm-hmm. Are they able to do that? Are they able to analyze things the way that we would, and then come up with a product that is inspired by that? Mm-hmm. So maybe another question for a different time as well.
Yeah.
The idea of purpose for art, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think the human element is what gives creative content that special humanity.
Yeah, right. There's just something intangible. There's something that you just can't put your finger on, especially at this time of the morning. There's nothing that you can say, oh yeah, that was made by someone who knew what they were doing. There's just, and then you compare that to like what a computer taking a photo, like you might not be able to tell the difference, but you can still tell.
Yeah.
Just it's very, very gray lines, mm-hmm. but you have a sense for what it is, I think, when you kind of try to analyze things or look at them in a new way. So
I think of photojournalists and like how they use images.
Oh yeah.
So you got a photojournalist who goes to, just say anywhere in Africa that's suffering right now. Mm-hmm. Somewhere that doesn't have water. Such vital to human life. And they're taking these pictures of people with the purpose of telling their story, showing the emotions going on here, and what happens through a set of maybe 20 images. And how do you do that? How do you capture that raw emotion and then portray that to people who have had water their entire life, who have internet the entire life? And I think that's the power of creative content, is you can portray emotion in such a way that grips other people.
You can
moves to action.
Take the people who look at what you do and kind of put them in whatever shoes you want them to fill at that time.
Yeah.
That's empathy. That's what makes us feel emotions about things. Mm-hmm. It's what makes us sympathize with characters, and it comes up in photojournalism, movies, mm-hmm. even music. It's so many different ways
of lyrics.
Yeah, exactly. Lyrics. Why do you use this chord versus another chord?
Yes.
Why do you go minor here? Why do you not follow whatever cadence you thought that your ear thought it was going to go to? Mm-hmm. The various things like that, just all over the place. So many questions to ask, so many various mediums to cover, but they all have that one theme, is that you can use those tactics to make people feel some type of way, so to speak.
Yeah. Maybe the use is just to create emotion in people.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that. There's many uses.
And you've said that before, emotion is the, how did you say it? Emotion is the core of what makes us something like that. It's an essential part of creative content, especially, but even just being alive, just functioning, it's an essential part of who we are. So moving on, I guess, is At a second point, using what you have. So I kind of alluded to this in my introduction, is that when I was a freshman and sophomore in high school, I had no means to make music and record it in a way that I could listen to it again or show other people what I knew how to do, other than performing it live just on the piano. But I had a whole ton I had a drum part, there's a synth, I think, there's a couple other different elements to this song that I just couldn't do live using just a piano. I didn't have very much to work with, but I did have that one tool, that one asset was my grandpa's very large tube Mac computer that I went back to, and that was what I had. And so everything about what I was making, the song that I made, was designed to be used inside that one program.
Yep.
And then it worked out. I think you have a similar experience for using a camera. You had the Alright, so funny story. We just found a limitation on the camera that we're using right now to record this show.
Yeah.
And that's that we have only 30 minutes of record time. And we're not even planning on using video as the primary medium for this show. But we just discovered a new constraint. And so we're going to have to build that into how we conduct further episodes, because we're going to know that we only have 30 minutes to record before the camera shuts off. We were about 1 or 2 minutes more into our show, and we heard the lens kind of refocused for a second. We were like, oh, that's scary. Yeah. we have to go make sure that this is working out. But so we just discovered a constraint, and we're gonna have to use that and maybe be creative in a different way, or maybe make a convenient cut halfway through our show and see where that takes us. So the idea that constraint breeds creativity can flow through a variety of different mediums, from podcasts to music to photojournalism. Anything that you make, use those tools that you have.
I think I just thought of the interesting place where constraint breeds creativity. The show Chopped, or Iron Chef. Like, here's an element that you have to use in your dish that is to be the main focus. You don't know what it is. Also, you only have 30 minutes to make this. Go. Like,
that's the idea of the show, is based off of that premise that you have to be creative within a certain boundary.
Yeah, and that's so fun to watch. Like, that's why the Food Network succeeds.
Right? That, and I'm hungry, and I want to see food.
Exactly. So,
and you have that.
I never thought chefs were that creative. Or like, I love chefs, but I just never thought of it like this. Never.
Yeah, from a creative standpoint, as you're making content, it happens to be something that I can eat.
Yes,
I love that.
That might be the best kind of content.
Did you have you used to have a T3i, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Was that T3i something that you found constrained you in ways that forced you to be more creative?
Oh, for sure. So I bought this T3i, 4 years ago, I think, 4 or 5, for the sole purpose of shooting a lip dub at my school, back in high school, my senior year. And for that purpose and for starting out, there's so many features I had no idea what they all meant. But then you start taking more pictures, shooting more videos, getting through all this content that you're making, learn more about the camera, and that's when you find all the constraints.
Yep.
So up until last year, I was still using this camera for professional video shoots, because once you really know a piece of equipment, you can push it to those limitations. You know how to use it to its max potential, even if it's like, okay, I need to go find this third-party software to give it this extra feature but you're still expanding that, and it's kind of like the zone of proximal development in my mind.
Yeah.
Love that theory. But so it definitely held me back, but I had to be creative in other ways, just because I wouldn't have been able to produce content.
Definitely. So zone of proximal development, for those of you who might not know what that means, is an educational theory by Vygotsky, one of my favorite education specialists. He's more of a psychologist, I think. He did a lot of work with the mind and child development, but that was one of his theories for how people learn. And we're both education majors.
Yep.
Maybe that should be stated as well.
I suppose.
But his theory was, if you're within a really comfortable range of your ability as a student, so if your teacher is giving you things that you already know how to do, you're not learning. And that is kind of understated. But once you start getting into things where you don't know how to do this, but you can still do it with help, with assistance, with guidance, that's the zone of proximal development. That's where optimal learning occurs. There's another zone outside of that, which is the frustration zone, which a lot of students find themselves in, is that they're not able to do what they're asked, even with help. So they're in this state of we're lost. And that's when, as a teacher, you kind of have to backtrack and figure out, where did they stop being able to do what I'm asking them to do? What is it that they're not understanding? And that's another essential part of teaching, which is probably a topic we'll get to soon.
Definitely, yeah.
Is that being able, as a teacher, to put yourself in the shoes of your students, to put yourself in their mind and understand things the way that they are understanding them, is a quality that every teacher should have. That's something that every teacher should be able to do. And because if you're not able to do that, then what good is being able to do multi-derivative calculus? If you can't understand where your students are, knowledge isn't like I can't transfer knowledge to you. It's not like I can download what I understand into your brain. I have to be able to facilitate that in learning.
Yes.
So if I'm teaching you something about audio, I can't just give it to you directly. I have to create an environment where you can learn it for yourself. That's what teaching is. Like, teachers can teach, but they can't learn for their students. And I feel like a lot of teachers miss that point. But anyway, I digress. Fun stuff. Being constrained, finding yourself in a place where you're able to go about things differently and come up with some very interesting results. That is for sure. So,
for sure.
Next point.
Yeah, let's touch on that.
Self-promotion. So this is something I see a lot with wannabe DJ producer type people. You see it all the time on SoundCloud or Facebook or whatever. And I mean, a lot of times the content that they put out isn't terrible, but there's this idea of self-promotion that it rubs me the wrong way. I'm not gonna lie. I tried not to be a self-promoter. I think that my content, if I make anything, should sell itself.
Yes.
If my content isn't getting people to wow, I mean, of course you do have to share it with some people, but the idea of like just putting it forward and not giving anything in the first place. So you can share it with a community, but if all you're doing is saying like, here, look at my stuff, here, look at my stuff, here, follow me, here, subscribe, like, something about that just doesn't resonate with me very well. And I see it on YouTube videos, SoundCloud, the whole follow us. I'm not going to ask anyone listening to this to follow us.
No.
I think if what we talk about is worthwhile to them and they think it's interesting and valuable to their lives, that is something that they will do on their own.
Yeah.
So that's not something I want to pressure people into doing. I think maybe hinting at what we'll talk about next week or things like that might be better ways to build intrigue through an audience. But I don't think that saying follow me is a very good way of getting followers that are actually loyal to what you do.
Corridor Digital on YouTube.
Yes.
YouTube channel makes action videos.
I remember,
They're a great channel. You should check them out. Super popular. But they just started making these videos for fun because they enjoyed it. They're film students, I think. And at the end of their video, they don't say like, hey, subscribe and stuff. They'll say, like, consider subscribing. So it's
more than an idea.
Yeah. So it's just kind of planting the seed, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'm struggling with like self-promotion right now. So it's like, as a wedding photographer, like, do you just let it all be word of mouth? Which I've essentially done up to this point. Like, I didn't have a Facebook page until 2 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, early summer, I remember.
Yeah, don't have a website, business cards, it's mainly been word of mouth of how stuff happens. So it's creating that content that is so captivating creative content, that's your self-promotion, is just what you make.
Yeah.
I think.
And maybe the self-promotion that rubs me the wrong way is limited to those that only present that about themselves. Yes. And that's predominantly what they give to the people around them.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with sharing what you've made, mm-hmm. especially with like a group of friends, like on Facebook. Like, if you made something cool, like, here, I did this. Mm-hmm. You know, you might have a lot of people who are actually interested in what you do, and that's what they'd look at. But if that's everything that you post on Facebook, like, how ridiculous would that be?
Gosh.
If you had a friend that was really good at making music, but all they did was say, oh, new songs out, listen to this. New songs out, listen to this. I would get so tired of that after 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
There's some artists, and it happens a lot with music. There's a site called Tone Den, I think, that does this, but the website will force you to follow the person on whatever medium, YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, one of the 3 or multiple of those, before you can download their song. And there are some times where I think the song is great. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to play that in one of my shows. Mm-hmm. I want to put my own twist on it. I want to see how it looks in Audacity and kind of analyze it. But every time that they force me to follow them, I end up unfollowing them right away, which makes me sound like a horrible person to the eyes of some people. Yeah. I think, but I really don't care too much, because chances are, if I liked your song enough to want to download it and look at it, I would follow you anyway.
Yeah.
But the idea that you're forcing that upon people is it rubs me the wrong way about how should I be getting followers? Through making them like me, which is really just an arbitrary thing on internet points. Like, making them like me in order to get to my music, I want to be the one who's letting that be free for the taking, and then that's how I want people to flock to me as an artist. Is if I want to garner or what's the word? If I want to acquire a great loyal following of people who are interested in what I do, it's not going to be by making them follow me.
No. Getting
some number that I can show to a record label. Oh, look, I have this many followers. I made 8/9 of them.
Yeah.
I made the majority of them follow me forcefully.
Yeah.
That means nothing to me.
Yeah.
So
I don't.
Food for thought, perhaps.
Yeah. Social media is definitely a topic we should talk about.
Yeah. We'll have a few episodes that definitely touch on that. It comes up everywhere.
Yeah.
Especially this being like a media content creation type of podcast, it's going to be something that comes up quite a bit. So
definitely. Let's talk about your last point.
All right. So this one is an Ira Glass quote, and I'll just read it. Maybe a lot of you have heard this before, but definitely something I think he said in an interview.
Yep. Just off the cuff.
Off the cuff. He didn't plan this out. He didn't like write it meticulously and like edit it. He just said this off the cuff. And Ira Glass, I believe, was a radio host,
which explains why he's so good at just talking.
Yes, exactly. So I'm just going to read this quote. It's something that I shared with John a couple of years ago, maybe. I thought it was interesting. It was, it's very sensationalized in media amongst content creators, I think, as well. But you get posters and various things from it. But I'll just read that, and there's some interesting points we can talk about. So here's what he says. Nobody tells this to people who are beginners. I wish someone told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. But there's this gap. For the first couple of years you make stuff, it's just not that good. It's trying to be good, it has potential, but it's not. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer. And your taste is why your work disappoints you. A lot of people never get past this phase. They quit. Most people I know who do interesting creative work went through years of this. We know our work doesn't have the special thing that we want it to have. We all go through this. And if you're just starting out, or you're still in this phase, you got to know it's normal. And most important thing you can do is just to do a lot of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week you'll finish one story. It's only going to be by going through a volume of work that you will close that gap. Your work will be as good as your ambitions. And I took a lot longer to figure this out than anyone I've ever met. It's going to take a while. It's normal to take a while. You just got to fight your way through.
Yeah.
So, making a lot of things. Like, have we ever made a podcast before?
Nope.
Do you think this podcast will be as good as one, even 10 or 15 episodes down the line?
No. I mean, we didn't know the camera had a recording limit.
Yeah, exactly. We have a lot to learn.
Oh yeah.
But, I mean, that's how you learn, is by making things. You have to be able to actually do some work instead of just talking about it. And that's actually kind of why this podcast started, is because we talk about making so many things.
Yeah.
And I think it was like a week ago, we just had this, what if we just made a podcast? It was this conversation and then it was like, yeah, that could actually, well, wait. Let's actually do something. Yeah. So this is us starting to try to fill that gap. Mm-hmm. And it's only in one medium, but I'm sure what we learn here will carry over into the other things that we do as well.
Yes, completely.
One other point I wanted to look at in here is that the idea that your work disappoints you.
Yeah.
And to be very honest with you, there is nothing that I have made as a creative artist, music, video, there's been nothing that I am completely satisfied with.
Oh, same.
Most,
Not at all.
I'd be like, that's all right.
Yeah.
That's usually what I give myself after I'm done.
Like,
we made a rap battle. I put hundreds of hours into it, and I was like, that's decent.
Yeah. I made drone video for the school we went to. It's all right.
Yeah. There's always this little bit like, oh, I could have done that differently. Oh, I could have done that differently.
Yeah.
And that's the point I wanted to bring up, is that I never want that to change. No. I never want to be completely satisfied with what I do.
No.
Because if you're, after that point, like, what is the point of making?
I think you really have to grow as an artist for that to happen.
Yeah.
And you to never be satisfied. Standards get higher.
Always be hungry for something better.
Yes.
I think you'll find that as a common theme amongst people who are maybe photography. I don't know what Vincent Laforet or Philip Bloom, like, do you think that they're satisfied with, oh, this is perfect,
No.
I'm done?
No.
They're always trying to push that boundary a little bit further. Even though they're at the very top of that, they're always trying to go one step farther.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's the same with me in making music or making videos or making podcasts. I never want to be content with what I've done.
No.
I'll be content to stop working on that particular piece and move on. Mm-hmm. Which is maybe another topic for, like, when do you know when to stop working on this one little podcast and then work on the next episode? And I think the goal of this one is to not really edit anything.
No, this is us raw.
This is just raw just us talking. We'll have one edit because of the camera problem. And we'll have to kind of make that work into other things. But we're just going to keep making things and continue to be disappointed with it and continue to try to make that get better.
Yeah.
And just always push the bar a little bit higher.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. Final thoughts?
I suppose. What do you think?
I think something that resonated with me was that constraint breeds creativity.
Definitely.
And how we were not planning to have a constraint in this podcast.
Yeah,
but now
that was a very meta.
It really was. But
example. And it came at the perfect time.
It really did. That was incredible. So now we're going to be forced to be a bit more creative to find a workaround to, I think it's going to make the show better.
Oh, definitely.
It's going to force us to just get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so being disappointed with work or saying not quite good enough yet, it then constraints breed creativity.
Mm-hmm.
That really stuck out to me.
Definitely. I guess if I had a final thought, I would go back to the what versus the how, the first point I brought up, is that maybe something I should have put in my introduction is that I am obsessed with communication in all sorts of different forms. That's what I'm studying in school right now. I'm trying to get my master's degree finished up, but I'm just obsessed with this idea of how do messages become effective as a teacher, as a content creator, as a friend, as a whatever you are. You're always communicating everything that you do. Your posture, your nonverbals, what you say, and how you say it, I think is the thing that gets me the most, is that what you say is important. So going back to the Suicide Squad, is what they did was important, and that was all right, but why they did it was just completely missing. How they did it was kind of this ambiguous, like, I mean, I can't look into the eyes of what they did, but if their goal was to tell a story, which I believe should be the goal of every movie that's out there, unless there's some like different format or like some kind of off the cuff interesting thing, but I think everything is really going to try to tell a story that makes you relate to it in some way, and that was just gone. But that and that's, I think, communications kind of brings the answer to a lot of those different problems. Why am I saying what I'm saying? How is what I'm doing getting my message across effectively? So that's communication, and just in general, and then applied to specific instances is a huge passion of mine as well, and that's something we'll touch on in a later episode. Next week, moving on, I suppose, we will be talking about education, which, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, we are both education majors, and teaching is the best way to learn.
It really is.
And we'll have a lot of interesting points about that. I guess that's about it for the first episode of the 226. I'm John.
I'm John.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.